Welcome back to another episode of the Tan and J-Man Show. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Tanner, in the middle of February, is in Hawaii. So I have the pleasure of being joined by my father, Dan Mundt. How you doing tonight, Dad?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. What a privilege it is to be sitting in for Tan.
Yeah, big shoes to fill, that's for sure.
Big shoes. I guarantee you I won't fill them as well as he can, but I'll do my best, though.
Tell the people a little about yourself, your fandoms, how you became a fan of these terrible teams that I have happened to inherit.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say I'm sorry.
It's been a rough 31 years.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say something about the Tan and J-Man Show. Tonight is my bucket list. There's no doubt about it. I've looked forward to this. I think you told me about it a month or so ago, and I've had it on my calendar. I'm actually in Seattle, next to a mountain, so hopefully I'm going to have good Wi-Fi, but I totally look forward to this. This has been our entertainment for Monday nights for now about 4 years. So anyway, talking about my team, sorry, Josh, you inherited them all from me. First of all, the Chicago Cubs are generational for me. We've been Chicago Cubs fans, and my family, my dad, my grandfather, for years. In fact, I remember talking to my dad. He was in a nursing home. He had no clue the Cubs won the World Series, but I went and put a Cubs hat on, and I said, "They won, Dad." And my grandpa was the same way. He's a big Cubs fan. And then really football-wise, Miami Dolphins is kind of an odd team for us. But back in 1972, everybody in my household were Bears fans, and I was just sick of it. And so I turned on TV. I said, I'm not going to be a Bears fan. And here was this aqua and white team, and they were the best team in the NFL in 1972, and that's when I became a Dolphin fan. So, and then University of Illinois, same thing. Just because I was born and raised in Illinois, everybody around me were Iowa fans because we're close. I live a lot closer to Hawkeye Stadium, but I just decided I was going to go against the trend and be an Illinois fan. So sorry, Josh, you kind of followed along. I gave you no choice growing up.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We had the one good Cubs moment. We had a good Illinois basketball moment. But the Dolphins have made the playoffs 3 times since 2001. So that's been pretty brutal.
Always something to look forward to, though.
Yeah,
all of our teams.
we try to go to at least one game a year, which is always fun. And they finally got a win in October when we went, but it hasn't always gone well for us. Now, we always like to choose the most difficult matchups to go and see them in New England. I guess we saw them play the Lions and Raiders. There's no excuse to lose to them, but had to see them play in Indianapolis during their the RCA Dome days, which was a place where teams just didn't go in there and win ever.
Not at all.
And we had to watch Cleo Lemon try to win that one, and that didn't go well.
In fact, I think that was Colts Super Bowl year, the year they won.
I think it was. Yeah, because Colts came into the playoffs. Their defense was awful.
It was terrible.
And then they played Baltimore. And did they beat who? I don't remember who they beat in the.
Was it San Diego?
I think the Patriots beat San Diego in order to play the Colts because Peyton had a real hard time with the Chargers.
He did
back then, and I think that was a 15-1 Chargers team, and we all thought the Chargers were gonna win the AFC because Colts had such a difficult time with them. They would have had to go to San Diego, but then New England upset them.
Right. I think I remember that.
I think Nick Novak was the kicker for the Chargers. He missed a field goal, but that was a weird Colts year because that was probably maybe their 4th or 5th best team in that era, and that somehow was the one that ended up winning the championship.
Definitely wasn't their best defense, but they got good in the playoffs. So that defense played unbelievable, and then they took on the Bears in the Super Bowl and played really well, and everybody was shocked. So
Bob Sanders, I remember that's kind of when he made a name for himself. Same with
University
Dwight
of Iowa.
Yep, University of Iowa guy. But and then they had the fortune of playing Rex Grossman in the Super Bowl.
Yes. I still remember coming out of RCA Dome, and you have a Dolphin outfit on, and this Colts fan came up to you that definitely had way too much to drink, and he saw you and he shoved you.
Yep.
And somebody grabbed me and said, because I turned to look at the guy, and somebody grabbed me and said, he ain't worth it. He's just
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. I was wearing a Randy McMichael jersey.
uh,
I remember I was only, what was I, 14 at the time? I probably looked older than I was, but yeah, that's when I realized Colts fans are really mean. Now they're pretty nice because they haven't been very good here the past 10, 12 years. And
I couldn't be more glad.
I don't hate them as much as I used to, but I used to, they were my least favorite team in sports there for about a 5-year stretch.
Yep.
But
yeah, me too. And I really have great admiration for Peyton Manning, but I didn't when he was playing the Colts just because they were so good.
Yeah, we had to hear about him.
He was just unstoppable. Yeah.
Before we get any further, I will give you a birdie bogey question here. As you said, huge Cubs fan. And the trivia question I have is, in 2016, what Cubs starting pitcher led Major League Baseball in ERA? In 2016, what Cubs starting pitcher led Major League Baseball in ERA? You can answer it at the end of the show. I think you have a pretty good chance to get that one.
In 2016, I know for sure who it was in 2015.
Yeah, 2016. I'm not going to give you any hints.
Oh, I know who it was. Yeah,
you should get it. But Birdie Bogey is brought to you by Arlington Public House. Arlington Public House has upscale cuisine and cocktails with a casual atmosphere. Located 703 Main Street in Rochester, Indiana. Tonight, if you are watching the Tan and J-Man show, head over to Arlington Public House afterwards because their special is a prime rib sandwich, which is topped with caramelized onions, provolone cheese, banana peppers, horseradish cream sauce, and a cup of au jus for $20. That sounds pretty good.
Sounds pretty good.
Pretty good. Well, you know what? Let's start with the Cubs. Off season of moves, they needed to go out and do something, especially at the shortstop position. You knew you had a need at second base or shortstop. You could keep Nico at short, move him to second base, getting one of the elite guys. They missed out on Xander Bogaerts. They missed out on Carlos Correa, and they missed out on Trey Turner. And so you're kind of left with Dansby Swanson, who I've been kind of wishy-washy on in his career. Had a really good year this past year. And then they go out and give him $175 million or something like that. That was a need that they addressed. They needed starting pitching help. Jameson Taillon, another guy who they signed to I think $80 million deal. But what has been your kind of thoughts on the Cubs offseason so far, and how do you think going forward they can kind of get back to competing? Because it's been a few mediocre years that we had not been really accustomed to here the past 10 years or so.
Right. Yeah. As far as Swanson, I don't know. I mean, Correa, everybody wanted Correa, but that turned out to be a pretty good no move there for the Cubs, it looks like. And Swanson, I mean, they gave him a lot of money. I think he will be a very good shortstop. Hopefully he can hit about 280 and, 25 home runs. That would be great. But I will say this. I think they'll have the best middle infield and maybe outfield in all of baseball with Nico and Swanson. It felt like some of the Cubs' moves were, I mean, they answered a need, but did they really get A-listers? However, my view is you win championships. I mean, the Dodgers could be a perfect example of this. I mean, they have certainly a good farm system, but they start adding a lot of parts to it and have won one World Series. Now, they've been to the playoffs. Anybody would take their record, no question about it. But to me, the way you build a team is through the farm system. You get these guys like Swanson to come in, veterans to kind of stabilize the club. You know what you're going to get when they come in. But, man, let's focus on guys like Brennan and Pete Crow Armstrong and Mervis and guys like that, who I think are going to be really good.
Yeah, I completely agree, because you look at the Dodgers, even though they were winning and they were spending a ton of money, giving up a bunch of draft picks to sign these guys, somehow their farm system depth was so great. And that should be the model of how you build a farm system. I know the Tampa Bay Rays did it first, and so the Dodgers went and stole their GM to be their president of baseball ops. But yeah, that is the way you do it. They had the prospect depth to trade for Max Scherzer, had the prospect depth to trade for Mookie Betts, had the prospect depth to trade for Trey Turner. And that's, I mean, it's great to have these guys in their farm system come up and be these superstar guys, but also if you can create depth, you can go out and get superstars just by trading guys that are like maybe top 10 prospect in your organization instead of trading your elite prospects for these guys. And I think that's kind of what the Cubs are doing. This has been their over the past couple of years. Obviously, they had a bunch of graduations to the major leagues. They were spending money, signing guys. So they were losing draft picks. So their prospects, their depth wasn't very good, but also their elite guys weren't even very good. Their top guys weren't even very good. But now they're starting to build this prospect depth where you can have a Matt Mervis, who's like a top 15-ish prospect in the Cubs organization. He hits 35 bombs last year and is in competition to win the first base or DH job to start the season. Pete Crow Armstrong traded Javier Baez for Pete Crow Armstrong. That was like a great deal now. Pete Crow is one of the top 30 prospects in baseball, middle of the diamond guy, great defensive center fielder. They think he can be a future leadoff guy, steals a ton of bases, just a really fun player to watch too. And then you look at another guy that they traded for Kevin Alcantara. They traded Anthony Rizzo for him. He looks like I was reading a prospect list that said Kevin Alcantara after this year will end up being a top 50 prospect. He's not even on top 100 list right now. He's 6'6", ton of power. They think he'll be able to stick in center field too, which is huge. So that looks like a great move. You have the deals when trading Chris Bryant, where you picked up Alexander Canario and Caleb Killian, who Killian did struggle in his time. But that is how you build especially sustainable, a sustainable winning program is through that. And you don't have to go through the rebuilds. Now the Dodgers on paper look like they'll be a little down this year because they lost Trey Turner. They lost a few other guys, but at the same time, at the end of the day, they'll probably still be sitting there with 90, 95 wins. And then,
well, they still have the pitching.
Yes.
But it's getting older. And I thought their best pitcher last year was the one that was hurt most of the year. Mm-hmm. Is that Buehler? I thought he was absolute.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, Walker Buehler is one of their best guys. Dustin May is also really good, and he missed the majority of the year. Kershaw contemplated retirement at the end of this past season. So he's 34, 35. You can't rely on him. Then you had the whole Trevor Bauer situation where he's now a free agent. But
anybody going to pick him up? Trevor Bauer?
I would be shocked. It's the allegations were too strong, even though the charges were dropped and all that, and the suspension's up. I can't imagine anyone would take the chance on him. Maybe a year or two down the line where they feel like it's cooled off a little bit, maybe. I'm really glad for one that the Cubs, because I know the Cubs really liked him for years, but I'm glad the Cubs didn't go out and get him because for one, I never liked him when he was with the Reds, but then the allegations come out and makes you hate him even more.
I didn't like him when he was with Cleveland.
I didn't either.
I thought he had no respect for other players.
Yep.
Definitely no respect for the manager.
Yes.
I mean, you can get a guy like that, great pitcher, but he just ruins your clubhouse. Mm-hmm. And if you go back to 2016 for the Cubs, they were friends. They got along. I mean, hearing them talk about each other was amazing. I mean, that's culture. And to me, that also plays into winning because you got to be with these guys for 160 plus games. And, you gotta like each other a little bit. So.
Yeah, that was the one thing Joe Madden did so well is create culture. Now he didn't do great at the end of his tenure because they kind of sustained winning, and it's kind of hard to keep that up. And I know Theo has even said that he had a hard time. He was great at building teams, terrible at maintenance, which I think Joe Madden would agree with for himself as well. So culture thing, and Bauer's not a great culture guy. I mean, that whole incident where Terry Francona was coming out to get him, and he just chucked the ball into the center field stands.
Right.
Francona was mad. I'm sure his players were embarrassed for one.
Oh, so embarrassing.
Yeah, I've heard stories that not many Dodgers players liked him at all. It even goes back to his high school days. He had like 0 friends, even just reading about that.
I could see that.
Garrett Cole and he were in the same UCLA rotation. Can you believe how good that rotation is?
That's
Garrett
incredible.
Cole has despised him since day one of their freshman season.
Wow.
So
I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, he just seems very unlikable. Great pitcher, but very unlikable.
Yeah, and especially in today's world, you need good culture guys if you're going to do anything at really any walk of life, but especially in sports, as you said, playing 160 games and 180 days. You're with each other all the time.
So. I don't care how high above the law you think you are because of money and fame. You can't abuse people. It's going to catch up with you, and people are going to put up with it.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and going back to your point about Swanson, him coming in as kind of the veteran guy, it reminds me a little bit of when the Cubs had the prospects coming up in 2014, and then they signed John Lester and David Ross. It kind of felt like, okay, now we feel like we can win. And hopefully this is a seismic shift in organizational philosophy, because I think Tom Ricketts really bungled the previous 5 years, and they didn't capitalize on winning at all when they had every opportunity to do so. And the issue that I have with Jed Hoyer is he waits for these guys to become free agents, but guys aren't becoming free agents anymore. Rafael Devers signed a $300 million contract with the Red Sox, an extension with the Red Sox. Manny Machado just signed a $300 million extension with the Padres. He was expected to become a free agent and would have been a top target. Now you look at the free agent bats. The best free agent bat out there is Ian Happ, and he's on your own roster already. And how much is he going to cost now? Because they haven't been able to get an extension done with him. So hopefully they'll be able to get an extension done with Nico. He's a guy I want around for a while. He's just
me too. Yeah.
He for one seems like a good clubhouse guy, works hard, stayed healthy last year, which is huge. And he's one of the best defensive players in all of baseball.
He really is. And I think Happ, you can't overlook him. All-Star last year.
Gold Glover too. And he was not thought of to be a good defensive player.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And he really has worked on his game. And, Ian Happ is who I thought Javi would be. I thought Javi would continue to get better and better and better, but it seems like Javi kind of reached his ceiling.
He did.
And but Happ hasn't seemed to do that yet. He works on his game hard, and so hopefully he'll keep doing that. But I think you sign them both. I mean, they're young guys, very talented. You can build a team around them, and I think you sign guys like that. Otherwise, you're going to lose them.
Yeah. So. And then there's no free agent bats out there to replace them with.
Right.
And it's great to have all these prospects, but they're so risky. The Cubs got so lucky that all of those guys, for the most part, turned into studs.
Right.
And even you look at it, Jorge Soler wasn't as good as they thought he was going to be. Addison Russell fizzled out quick. Kyle Schwarber didn't hit like they thought he would. Now he's smashing, but back then he didn't. So you can't just rely on, we can just plug Brennan Davis in here. We can plug Pete Crow Armstrong in here. You just don't know.
Right.
So
I mean, of all the guys, I thought Soler and Schwarber were going to be around forever.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to bat, 280 and, 30 home runs a year. And Schwarber, I mean, when you look at that World Series, 2016 World Series with no practice, and he came in and had an impact.
Yeah.
I mean, that was unbelievable that they were starting. In fact, I was mad that they started him because I thought, man, what are you doing? The guy hasn't played all year. He's been injured. His speed is going to be really low at bat, yet he comes in and mashes. He was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he even ran the bases some.
It was funny watching. He went and hit 7. He was 7 for 17 after not facing major league pitching since early April, which is absurd.
It's crazy.
You can take as many at bats in the Arizona Fall League as you want, but you strap it on and play in a World Series game and somehow make an impact against Corey Kluber, who was all world at that time.
Best.
Yeah. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I actually think the reason why the Cubs won that World Series is because they did not have home field advantage.
I agree.
And then they could use the DH, and Kyle became the DH.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was, I mean, I didn't like it at first because Cubs had a better record than Cleveland, but I actually think that was the reason they won the World Series.
Yeah, they got the extra hitter, and I think World Series teams play tight at home because there's this nervous energy where they can play more free on the road. Because those first two games at home, they were real tight, lost 1-0, and then got down big early against Cleveland. And then they found a way to win Game 5. But yeah, I really think that helped as well.
Yeah, me too. So, what other teams do you think has made the biggest impact in the National League this year?
National League, the Mets are just spending ridiculous amounts of money and hoping it all works because it hasn't for a while. I think the Mets will be good. Phillies kind of, I mean, it's probably the Phillies. I mean, they were the World Series runner-up, National League champs. Then they go out and get one of the best shortstops in baseball, and Trey Turner. Add him with Bryce Harper, who's recovering pretty well from Tommy John surgery. He probably missed a little bit. Nick Castellanos had a better postseason than he had regular season. Schwarber hit 40 bombs or something like that. JT Realmuto's still there. They have good pitching. I think on paper they're the team to beat, definitely in the NL East, although the Braves should be pretty good again.
Of course, Wilson, that's pretty loaded.
Yeah, Wilson Contreras. I want to talk about Wilson Contreras a little bit because signs with the Cardinals, and then he has not stopped bashing the Chicago Cubs since he got there.
I don't get it.
He's such an emotional guy, and he was sobbing during his last game. The fans loved him, and he is just it's to the point his first game there, I think he's going to get booed.
Which is terrible. Yeah. I mean, it's terrible, but he brought it on himself. It's not the fans' fault.
Saying Cardinals are a better organization. It reminds me a lot of when Ryan Theriot went there, said he's finally on the right side of the rivalry, which not many people liked Ryan Theriot to begin with, but people loved Wilson Contreras, and he goes and said Cardinals are a better organization, all of that. Now, I'm sure he and Jed didn't have a great relationship because contract extension talks broke down. They didn't trade him at the deadline when they probably should have. But still, it's like Dexter Fowler handled it perfectly, and he got a standing ovation. Hayward handled it perfectly, although the Cardinals fans hated him for it, and they booed him. But I just don't know. It doesn't help. For one, the funny thing is, Wainwright threw 50 pitches. No, he threw I don't know how many pitches Wainwright threw to Wilson Contreras in their first spring training game, but he only threw 50% of them for strikes. Which is crazy because Wainwright's one of the best control guys in baseball. So I think they're gonna have a major dip in defensive production behind the plate. He'll hit more than Yachty did, but I don't think it's that much of an upgrade, to be honest.
I don't either, and I'm sure Cubs fans hate that they didn't sign him, but here's the guy. He's almost 30 years old, or is he? Is he 30 years old?
He is 30. He'll turn 31 in May, I believe. Yeah.
And you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a guy that he's a hard worker, no doubt, but he's a streaky hitter.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of passion, but do you pay $70-80 million for passion?
Yeah. I thought it was a weird deal. I at the time, I'm like, hey, I'm glad Wilson got paid. I'm glad the Cubs didn't give him that deal because honestly, he didn't hit as much as he should have. And it was to the point his defense was so bad that he was a DH for a majority of the year last year.
Yep.
So now Cardinals are going to replace maybe the best defensive catcher of all time in Yadier Molina for a guy who's just he can throw, but he's not a good game caller or pitch framer or any of that stuff. So
yeah. Now Cubs didn't upgrade much at catcher, which could hurt them.
Their offense definitely is downgraded, but I do like Tucker Barnhart because he's a really good catch and throw guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like him, and Gomes is a great backup, and he's just a solid guy.
Yeah, I bet it's pretty close to 50-50 split because I think Gomes is going to be their guy. The good thing about Tucker is he's switch hitter, so you can face him against tough righties. But yeah, they definitely didn't go out and try to buy offense there. They just want, which again adds they might have the best defense in baseball this year after having a pretty bad one because you replace Nick Madrigal with Nico Horner, and then Dansby's over there. Cody Bellinger in center fielder is an immense upgrade over Rafael Ortega or whoever was out there. Hermosillo,
You never
Morel
knew
wasn't
who was
good
out
there.
there.
Yeah. That might be my favorite signing of the offseason, the 1-year deal for Bellinger, because it's really boom or bust. He has a pretty high floor because he's so good defensively. But man, if he can be half of the hitter he was, they have a really good chance to make the playoffs.
He can hit 250. I mean, I think last year he was 210, 216, something like that.
He'll run into some homers, but he can play obviously elite defensively in center field. He can also play first base too, which is big, because I don't think Eric Hosmer is going to last more than 2 months before they ship him off.
Right, I agree.
So,
yeah. Hey, one thing I did want to say about Contreras, that this is probably the thing that upsets me most, is the Cubs recognized him and brought him on when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
I mean, he was 16 years old in Dominican Republic.
He'd been around so long. He was a Jim Hendry signing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So then for them to blast them, I just don't think that pays you in the long run. I mean, you didn't see Chris Bryant doing that. Definitely didn't see Dexter doing that when they didn't re-sign him. You know, Anthony's had his moments, but I think if he comes back to Wrigley, he's going to get a standing ovation.
For sure.
But I mean, Wilson he hurt himself. That's the problem. He hurt himself.
Yeah, and there was no need. Praise the Cubs organizations had a great time there. Now I'm with the Cardinals. I'm where I'm supposed to be. He didn't have to go on this whole rant about how he's finally in a good organization, all of that.
Right.
And,
Yep. What about the American League? Anybody make any moves?
I'm trying to think. Carlos Correa's back with the Twins. Rangers signed Jacob deGrom. I'm trying to think about who all signed. Carlos Rodon's with the Yankees. Judge went back to the Yankees. So Yankees will be good.
That's pretty big.
Red Sox
went back to the Yankees.
Yeah, Rizzo did as well. Red Sox will be trash. Their fan base has really turned on ownership and the front office there, which is kind of funny to see, because they have nobody. Bogarts is gone. JD Martinez is gone. They might be the worst team in the American League this year, which is hard to even think about. You can't even fathom the Red Sox being the worst team in the American League, but it's trending that way. Rays will be good.
Yeah, this team where I am right now in Seattle, I mean, they have high hopes.
Yeah.
And I don't know that anyone that wasn't a Seattle fan during the playoffs last year played Houston.
Yeah. Yeah.
I certainly was. Anybody that plays Houston, I'm going to go, for them for sure.
Yeah, first time in 21 years making the playoffs, and those fans did not disappoint. They were loud.
They did not.
They were excited, and it was fun to see. It's fun. I want new blood in the American League, because the Astros won the World Series again.
Right.
They're probably going to be back. Yankees are going to be good again. The AL Central is kind of up for grabs. Who knows who's going to be good there? Right. But it's kind of the same guard. You have the Braves, Dodgers, Cardinals. Brewers have been around for a while now. Phillies are good again.
Brewers. I mean, will they be any good? Brewers?
Brewers still have their pitching. Although Corbin Burns, it's funny because he'll be a free agent after next season, I think. But they went to arbitration for his contract because the Brewers did not want to settle. I think they were only off $100,000. Brewers could have done some really goodwill by giving him the extra $100,000, and now it's to the point where Corbin Burns was so mad that he's probably not going to come back.
For $100,000.
It was like $100,000 to $250,000. That's it. And
wow.
So they tick off their ace, which is stupid, especially the guy who's going to be a free agent in a few years. So they've had a little bit of controversy there. They still can't hit though, their team, which they struggled last year. They should be good just because their pitching's good, but I mean, traded Josh Hader, he's no longer there, so their bullpen's not as good as it was. I think the Reds and Pirates will be bad. Pirates should be better. They'll be more interesting at least, but the Reds will be terrible.
Pirates were interesting last year.
Yeah.
I thought they started getting a little better last year.
Yeah, they have trying to think of their shortstop that came up. I forget his name, but he's really good. Brian Reynolds is good. He's been around for a while. They made a few moves where they actually signed veteran major leaguers. But other than that, I think we covered baseball pretty good.
And Reds seems like they have some good pitching, better pitching coming up. Is that right?
Yes. So Hunter Green's the guy who throws 104 miles an
That's
hour.
right.
They have Nick Lodolo, but yeah, their farm system's really good. It's one of the top, probably 5 to 10 in all of baseball, and they're getting pretty close too, to the major leagues. So they'll be better here within a few years. They kind of did the rebuild route,
Right.
but the Votto contract's hurting him a little bit. He's a likable guy. He just can't hit anymore. But yeah, they should be turning the corner here within the next 2 years or so. I would say. And Pirates have a good farm system. Cubs have a good farm system. Cardinals farm system's good. So National League Central will probably be down here for a year or two, but then it'll be probably back up to where it was.
Yep. Hopefully there's hope.
Yep. Moving on to word association real quick. You know the drill. I give you something, and you say what your thoughts on them are. So let's see here. I'll bring up the word association. Here we go. Word association. I have 7 players from the 1984 Miami Dolphins and 7 players from the 1984 Chicago Cubs. 2 of the best teams in each franchise's history. You had a good year in 84. It was about 8 years from being born, but you had a good one. Starting with year. Dan Marino.
Man, quick release, no Super Bowl victory, though. Maybe the greatest player to ever play and not win a championship.
Yeah, I'll even go on record and say Dan Marino, until Patrick Mahomes came to the league, I think Dan Marino is the greatest thrower of the football ever. With that release, arm strength, accuracy. But now you're seeing Patrick Mahomes do this kind of stuff, and you're like, man, he would have thrown 90 touchdowns back in the day.
Yeah, with the rules that they have today. And I would say Josh Allen also has a real fast release. But Marino was one of a kind coming up. I mean, when you even watch his games now, you just say, wow, as soon as he thought about it, that ball was out of his hand.
He looked, watching video of him back then, he looked like a modern quarterback today, besides
he really did.
His lack of athleticism. But the way he threw the ball, for sure.
He wasn't athletic, but he could move. He didn't get sacked much. I mean, he knew when the pressure was coming, a little bit like Tom Brady, I would say.
Mark Clayton.
Wow, fast. He was exciting. He was one of the first small receivers that I remember that could just get open. And as long as you had a good quarterback, Dan Marino, that could hit him, I mean, he was to the races. He was fun over the middle. That's where he seemed to shine, over the middle.
Mark Duper.
Mark Duper, same thing, but he was fast, straight line. He didn't go over the middle much. In fact, he used to make me mad. He'd go over the middle, he'd get hit, and he'd fumble the ball. But man, straight speed, he'd blow everybody away. He was, again, another small guy, 5'9".
Yeah, both of them were 5'9", weren't they?
They were both 5'9".
Tony Nathan.
Tony Nathan, the running back that could do everything. He could catch the ball. He could run the ball. He could block. I mean, he really is what I think made Dan Marino partly who he was, because he just gave him another tool, and he was just so smart back there. So he was a great ball player.
Nat Moore.
Nat Moore, everybody thought he was going to retire, number 89. I still remember against the Chicago Bears, the biggest game I've ever watched, 1985. I mean, they were going to cover the Duper and Clayton guys, and Nat Moore had a heyday. He was just a great guy, third down receiver that could get open for his age. I mean, he was not young then.
Yeah. That's your favorite, probably regular season game of any sporting event ever. Was the 85 Monday night game. But just watching highlights of that, you knew it was probably the Dolphins night when Marino threw a ball off of a helmet and it ended up right. And what was that? Nat Moore that caught it?
No, that was Clayton.
Was it Clayton that caught it?
About 30 yards downfield.
Yeah.
Right into his hand. Easy touchdown. Yeah. That was a great game.
Kim Bocamper.
Bocamper, he was really made that defense stable. But here's kind of what my philosophy is. When you have a really good offense, you usually don't have a good defense. And I think there's a reason for that. It was in 1984 that the killer bees started to get bad.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody could figure out. Same defense they had in 1982, but then you had Marino in 83, 84. So now teams are coming in knowing they have to score 30 points a game. So it changes everything. People are on the defense, but really it might be as much the offense's fault as the defense because they have to score every time they touch the ball.
Yeah, I've never even thought about that. But you don't see. I mean, Tom Brady had some good defenses, but none of them were like elite defenses. They were earlier in his career, but then he started throwing 50 touchdowns, and the defenses weren't as good. Mahomes has never had a good defense. It seems like Peyton had a really good defense in Denver, but that's about the only guy I can think of that had like an elite defense that was also an elite quarterback. Rodgers has never had that great of a defense. Neither did Favre.
Right. But really, with Peyton in Denver, he was at the end of his career, and he needed a great defense.
Yeah.
Because he would not have won the Super Bowl on his offense.
Yeah.
Definitely
not.
Even Buffalo Bills on paper, they're a great defense, but they gave up a lot. I mean, they gave up 60 points to the Dolphins. No, 90 points to the Dolphins this year. I mean, and that was what the third string quarterback, the last one was.
Yeah, I know it.
And Mahomes, they give up a lot. I mean, think of Minnesota Vikings, arguably the best receiver in all of football, maybe the best ever. But yet that defense, which is a pretty good defense, they give up more points than anybody.
Yeah, it's weird how that works. I never even thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
AJ Dewey.
AJ Dewey, I still remember 1983 AFC Championship game. I know he was on the 84 team too. But they didn't have any offense at all. But he came out, I think it was 82. He came out and in a terrible downpour, he had 3 picks. I think one of them for a touchdown. He was just a great middle linebacker, big eyes, kind of like Singletary. But in 1984, he was the key to their defense too.
Yeah, I think I sent you a clip of it and asked if you remembered when the whatever anniversary it was, like the 40th year anniversary or something like that.
Yeah, they were playing the New York Jets.
Yep, in a mud bowl.
Yep.
Switching to the Cubs, Ryan Sandberg.
I think he's the best second baseman that I ever remember playing. Mm-hmm. I mean, and he was a classy guy. I mean, 30-30 was it seemed pretty normal for him, the potential of being a 30-30 guy, but great defense. Again, classy guy. I still like to hear him talk, even though he's not the most articulate. He knows baseball.
Yep. Bobby Dernier.
I mean, he was a great center fielder, leadoff guy. I mean, he was they called him bread and butter. He and Sandberg, he was number 1. Sandberg batted number 2. And I think not 84. No, Grace wasn't part of 84. Maybe it was Palmeiro. It was somebody really good that batted number 3.
He probably on the list, Leon Durham.
Yep, Leon Durham. I think he was their cleanup guy. First baseman, really good first baseman. He must have been right before Rafael Palmeiro.
Yeah.
And
Palmeiro was more like 87 to 90, I believe, and then Grace kind of took over.
Yep.
Yeah, and Leon Durham was the one reason why they didn't beat the Padres in the NLCS in 84.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
He was Bill Buckner before Bill Buckner did his thing.
And Bill Buckner was a Cub, by the way.
I think he was on that team actually in 84.
I think he was, yeah.
It might be towards the end of his tenure there, but Keith Moreland.
Keith Moreland, terrible announcer.
I hated him when he was.
He wasn't that great of an announcer, but
he was terrible.
He was just scrappy out there. I mean, he was a player's player. Mm-hmm. You knew he was going to give everything. He was going to go 100 miles an hour. Pretty good hitter, decent defender.
Yeah.
He was fun to watch, though.
What was his nickname? Zonk? Was that his nickname? Zonk or something like that?
Man, I can't remember what it was. Keith Moreland. I can't remember what it was. He was redheaded, I know.
Yes.
I'm sure Harry Carey said something about that.
Yeah. Rick Sutcliffe, speaking of red hair.
Yeah, Sutcliffe,
the Red Baron.
Man. You knew when he got the ball, he was going to throw a lot of innings, keep the score low. I mean, he was really fun to watch. Now, he was Cy Young winner. I don't know if it's 84.
Yeah, so
84?
He started the year with Cleveland, and the Cubs traded for him. And he was so good. I think he won 16 games after the Cubs traded for him that he ended up winning the Cy Young that year.
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah. Dennis Eckersley.
Dennis Eckersley. I mean, he went on to be one of the best closers, one of the best closers ever. I don't think he was a closer for the Cubs the whole time.
He was a starter.
I think he was a starter, And I mean, he's more known for what he became after he left the Cubs, but he was pretty good starter for the Cubs, 1984.
And gave up maybe the most famous home run in baseball history to Bob Gibson.
Right.
Not Bob Gibson, Kirk Gibson.
Kirk Gibson, yeah.
Yep. Last one here, Lee Smith.
Lee Smith, yeah. I think he still comes to the ballpark some.
Yeah.
Lee Smith. He's in the Cubs Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I remember when we went to spring training back in like 2011, he was there just kind of hanging out. I remember just maybe signing autographs and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when you had a lead in the 8th and 9th and you put him in, you could lock it down pretty good. I think one year didn't he have 50?
Yeah.
Maybe 84, he had 50 saves. Something like that.
Yeah, he had a bunch. And that was back when closers would throw multiple innings, which I think that's starting to come back a little bit.
I do too.
But yeah, back then you'd see closers throw like 100 innings in seasons,
right?
Which just doesn't happen anymore.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Word Association is brought to you by Proforma Print 2 Promo Group. Are you looking for a trustworthy, dependable resource for your next trade show, company picnic, or sales meeting? Proforma has over 50 years combined experience in promotional products and commercial print. They strive for fast and efficient response to all your print needs. You need to look no further. Let us be your one-source print promotional company. Call today at 574-210-3815 or email barbara.vanweinsberg@proforma.com. Moving on to On This Day, we'll get through this real quick, then we can talk some college hoops. I'm going to bring up the sports page. On this day, in 1874, baseball was first played in England at Lord's Cricket Ground. 1874.
Lord's Cricket Ground.
Yeah. I don't understand cricket at all.
I don't either.
Yeah. On this day in 1959, Boston Celtic Bob Cousy set the then NBA record with 28 assists. The Boston Celtics scored 173 points against Minneapolis Lakers. I believe.
What year was that?
1959.
59.
Yep. I believe the NBA record is still held by Plymouth, Indiana high school grad Scott Skiles, who had 31 in a game with the Orlando Magic. I believe that's still the record. 1963, Mickey Mantle of the New York Yankees signed a contract worth $100,000. If you put Mickey Mantle's numbers in his prime, in today's money, he'd be $500 million easily.
Oh, yeah. The $100,000. Was that a 1-year contract?
It doesn't say. It might have been a 1-year contract, which back in '63 was a lot of money.
That would have been a lot of money.
Yeah. On this day in 1987, NCAA canceled SMU's entire 1987 football schedule for gross violations of NCAA rules regarding athletic corruption. I remember there was an ESPN documentary about that was real interesting. They pretty much got the death penalty.
When it happened.
Yeah.
Death penalty.
And that is going to do it for On This Day. There wasn't a whole lot this week. On This Day is brought to you by Mooney Woodcrafts. Mooney Woodcrafts, let's see. Mooney Woodcrafts is a veteran-owned and operated woodcraft shop based out of North Carolina with Indiana grassroots. They provide 100% hand-cut custom designs to fit your needs, and their pieces are a great addition to any home, office, or man cave. You can see some of their recently completed projects at Mooney Woodcrafts on Instagram and Twitter. Let them know the Tan and J-Man Show sent you for 15% off your order.
By the way, I got a text from your mother who said Keith Moreland's name was Zonk.
His nickname was Zonk. That's right.
Zonk, yep. And if anybody knows, she knows.
College hoops. Switch into that real quick. In the Big Ten, it's always a crazy week, but you see Purdue lose a home game to Indiana. You see Illinois lose to a terrible Ohio State team. You see Northwestern blow an 18-point lead to Illinois and lose in the second half. Maryland looks like they've turned into be maybe the third best team in the conference. Michigan's right back on that NCAA tourney bubble. Penn State blew a 19-point lead yesterday, and they were right on the bubble, and that probably knocks them off. Wisconsin beats Iowa. Iowa comes back from 13 down with a minute and a half left to beat Michigan State. It was an absurd week, really all around college hoops. Arizona State went into Arizona and won on a half-court buzzer beater.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah, that was crazy. Florida State came back from 25 down at Miami and won on the last-second three. And Florida State's terrible, and Miami's good. So, yeah, college hoops is just absurd right now.
Doesn't it seem like there's always a weekend like this?
Mm-hmm.
Big upsets, big comebacks. Yeah. I mean, stuff you'd never even imagine happen. Usually there's 1 or 2 weekends a year, kind of like in every sport. There's just a weird sports weekend.
Yeah, it feels like it happens late February a lot because conference championships are starting next week, which is crazy. Seems like the season just started. This is the last week of regular season Big Ten basketball.
I just want to say it for all your friends out there too. You realize you're getting married on the weekend of the Big Ten tournament.
This was a compromise because it was either this or the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. So I thought
picked the right weekend.
I thought it would be better if they missed the semifinal of the Big Ten tournament than it would be if they missed a round of 32 game or something. It's a little more at stake there.
They're going to have a lot of fun at your wedding.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure they're going to be sneaking on their phones too.
I'm probably going to be sneaking on my phone quite a bit. But now if Illinois is not in it, which we'll talk about Illinois, but Purdue and Indiana, which are my friend's favorite teams, they both have a real good shot to get there. Speaking of the Purdue-Indiana game, I only watched a handful of minutes of that game. I watched the first half, and then I didn't really watch the second half. Didn't think Indiana really had a prayer, especially after Indiana beat them in Indiana. I thought Purdue would come out.
Me too.
Guns a-blazing. Both of you have been, you and I have been to Mackey Arena, and we know how loud that
crazy loud
arena, like to the point your ears hurt. And I thought there was no way Indiana would go in there and win. And Trace Jackson Davis didn't score a single point in the first half, and they somehow
10 points altogether. That was
somehow found themselves down just 5. Their freshman guard Jalen Hood-Schifino, 35 points. He reminds me so much of Ayo Dosunmu.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah, his size. Yeah. He is such a great mid-range jumper shooter, which is what that was kind of Ayo's bread and butter. A little crossover, hit a little mid-range jumper.
Right.
But I think Purdue's been a little bit exposed here the past 3 weeks or so. They've lost 4 games here in the last couple of weeks. They, for their entire win streak, the first 3.5 months of the season, 3 months of the season or so, it's like, man, Zach Edey's really good, but they're also getting really good contribution from everyone else. Well, the freshman walls kind of hit Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer to the point where it would not surprise me if Purdue is a 1 or 2 seed that gets knocked out in the round of 32. They need a lot more from those guys because, we've seen it last year. Illinois was Kofi Coburn and maybe Trent Frazier knocks in some shots or Alfonso Plummer, but if those guys go cold, you have no shot. Which is kind of been the theme here the past few weeks for Purdue. And I think if a team they face, it's all about draw in the NCAA tournament. And if they draw a team that has really athletic guards that can go and post trap Zach Edey, I think they're really going to struggle.
Yeah, it does remind me a lot of Illinois with Kofi. I don't want to take anything from Purdue. They're a great team. They're probably the best coached team in the Big Ten.
Maybe the country. I think Matt Painter might be the best coach in the country.
I do too. But, you have a superstar. You're going to be feeding him the ball. Well, smart teams know how to play against that. They catch up with them eventually. They study all of his weaknesses, and he's still going to have 25 a game, but it's the other guys around him that if they're not hitting, one guy can't win a game. That's just all there is to it. And I actually think, I'm wondering, as much as it pains me to say this, if Indiana is the best team in the Big Ten. I mean, I don't think you'd vote against Purdue. Certainly they have a resume that's unbelievable. But right now, if you just take them right now, how are they playing? I think Indiana's playing as good as anybody I've seen in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, they're two-headed monster with Hood Schifino's looking like a superstar now. Now, Trace Jackson Davis already a superstar. And then you add in a Miller Kopp, who's one of the better defenders in the Big Ten, who can also shoot. Trey Galloway from Culver Military Academy, good glue guy. Race Thompson's had his moments. Right now, I would say they're the best team in the Big Ten. I think they're playing the best basketball. And they're still missing their point guard, Xavier Johnson. I don't know if they're a better team if he comes back. Broke his foot against Kansas. But yeah, I think as of right now, I would say they're the best team in the Big Ten, but Maryland is right on their heels because Maryland beat them.
Maryland's coming up.
Yeah, Maryland's won. They won. They looked really good, but then I just now remembered they lost at Nebraska last Sunday. But that's just kind of the way it is in the Big Ten. Nebraska's beating about everyone right now, it feels like.
Big Ten's hard to play on the road.
Yeah, it is. And it's more so even this year than it's ever been. Road teams just aren't winning at all.
Yep, so. Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Indiana, Purdue, Maryland, they're the top three. And again, I think you can interchange Purdue and Indiana. I mean, again, I'm not going to vote against Purdue. They certainly deserve to have the best record. But that record's been tainted lately. And think about this. If Northwestern would have beaten Illinois, at least for a day, they would have been tied for first place.
Which is crazy.
And Illinois was up by 8, Northwestern was up by 18 at halftime.
Yeah, and 16 with 10 minutes left, too.
Yeah.
So Terrence Shannon went scorched earth. But, I think Northwestern had their fun in the sun, and now they're going to fall back. They're going to be an NCAA tournament team, which is all they really hope for there. But, just the Big Ten tournament's going to – it's always crazy, and it's always fun. But it seems like this year, because they're like 6 or 7 teams that are right there, 10-8, 9-9, 9-8, 10-7. There's so many teams bundled together that you could go from being in second place all the way down to 8th in the span of 2 days.
Easily. Yeah.
Which brings me to the University of Illinois. They had that great come from behind win, thought that was going to be the turning point, and then they come out yesterday and it was an absolute dud. Zero energy, no life whatsoever. The way it started, like, this is great. Matt Meyer hit a 3 early. Coleman Hawkins got a steal and dunk early, got another steal, and then he missed a layup. And Ohio State went on an 8-0 run right away, and they got down 8-5. And then they get down 15 in the first half. It's 12 at halftime. Come back, cut it to 1. Seems like they don't start playing until they're down double digits.
Yeah, that's going to come back to bite you too. And then one bad offensive, set. I mean, Epps took a long 3-point shot, missed it horribly. And it seemed like that changed everything for a while because they were down by 1. They would have been up. He misses it, and Ohio State goes on a run, like 8-0 run.
Yeah.
So, and that was really the end of the game. Illinois showed some spark after that, but this team's just so inconsistent. It's maddening. There's no doubt about it. And I don't know, maybe at the beginning of the season when we saw what they could be, our expectations went up. This is a totally different team than last year with a lot of freshmen on it. And maybe we just set our expectations too high after the first couple of weeks, and now we're getting to see what they really are. But I thought Brad Underwood could coach them to be a really good team in the Big Ten. I don't think everybody responds to Underwood's style of coaching well. And I think some of the younger guys, even the freshmen that walked off the team, I just don't think some of them respond well to that. Not saying he should change it. He's a pretty good coach, but
he's even mentioned that he's had to coach this group differently, especially after they got blown out by Missouri, which was an embarrassing loss. He said, I just, because there were times where he just go and scream at him, go just off on them in the huddle, and it obviously didn't work. So he had to switch some things up. Then they went on that nice win streak, thought things were turned back around, and now they have 4 games guaranteed left. 2 in the regular season, 1 big tournament, 1 they're going to make the NCAA tournament. I'm not worried about that, but they might be a play-in game at this point if they continue down this path. But they are who they are at this point,
right?
Which is frustrating. Their 2 wins are arguably the 2 best collection of 2 wins any Big Ten team has this year. UCLA and Texas. Texas is going to be a 2 seed. UCLA might be a 1 seed. They also got down 15 in the second half in both of those games.
Right. Yeah.
So
you love the grit, but you just say, why don't we just not get
stop
down?
It. Yeah, stop getting down 15.
And this team just doesn't start well.
They don't.
I don't know what it is, especially on the road.
All season long. They were tied with a terrible Minnesota team at home with like 2 minutes left in the first half. And they are not a good shooting team. They are 12th in the Big Ten in 3-point field goal percentage and first in attempts to the point where Brad Underwood said in his post-game press conference, he said, I've never been one to tell guys not to shoot it, but we're getting real close to that. So he sees it.
Well, when you realize they're like number 1 in the paint, though.
Yeah.
Number 1 or number 2 in the paint, then go to the paint every time.
They are leading the Big Ten in 2-point field goal percentage. They keep jacking up. These off-balance, terrible threes. There's a reason why they're dead last, which is what Underwood said. An Illinois fan tweeted, and it's about where I'm at right now. The guy tweeted, I don't hate this team, but when this is over in 3 weeks, I'm not going to miss it either. Which is pretty much where I'm at at this point. But
the crazy thing about this team, though, they have 2 tough games: Michigan at home, Purdue on the road. When they were playing good, I could see them win both of these games. I could also see them losing both of them.
I still think you put Illinois' best, or if every team in the Big Ten played at their absolute best, I still think Illinois is the best team in the Big Ten. And that's where it's been just so fresh. And this has been one of my least favorite teams to watch here in the past
and so
5 years. Definitely in the Underwood era, because you knew the first 2 years they weren't going to be very good. And then, of course, they were likable in 2019, 20, 2021, 21, 22. But this team had expectations. They got up to like 12th in the country, and then they just fell back. And this was the first week that they did not receive at least 1 top 25 vote. So Underwood's teams had been peaking at this point in the season the past couple of years, but not this one for sure.
Not this one. Yeah, definitely.
And
if you don't get that top 4, I mean, top 4 means double bye, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Of course, Indiana didn't have a double bye last year, and they won the Big Ten, didn't they?
Iowa won the Big Ten tournament.
Iowa did. Okay.
Yeah. But I don't think Iowa was a top 4 seed, but they got hot.
They definitely got hot. Yeah. And they could do that this year. They just can't play defense.
They just can't play defense. Yeah. Iowa's scoring 89 points a game at home and only 60 some on the road. So
that's unbelievable.
Which brings me to this. Let's pick some games here within the next minute or so before we have to go. Iowa at Indiana tomorrow night.
I think Indiana and a laugher.
I think I think Iowa will be able to keep it close, but again, they don't shoot well on the road, so I could see Indiana winning by 15. But give me Indiana. A big game here for Penn State. They play at Northwestern on Wednesday.
I say Northwestern. I think Penn State's done.
Yeah, Penn State's a scary team though because of their ability to shoot the ball. But yeah, give me Northwestern in a real close one at home.
Yeah, I think it'd be close.
Thursday night we have Michigan at Illinois.
I'm going to stay with Illinois. I think this is for pride now.
Yeah, 100% agree. Give me Illinois in a close one. Michigan's starting to play well. Last one here before I give you Birdie Bogey. Illinois at Purdue. Sunday afternoon.
I think it's going to be very close, just like Illinois going into Indiana, but I think Purdue squeaks it out. But I think it's going to be a close game.
This will be the J-Man's Book It prediction of the week. I have zero confidence in this, and I think Purdue wins by at least 15 points. They won't be able to stop Edey. I just think Purdue, after losing a home game on Saturday, won't let it happen again. So Purdue big. J-Man's Book of Predictions Week brought to you by Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance Agent Travis Watching for life, home, auto, business, renters, workers' comp, and farm insurance. Contact Travis at 219-869-4561. Birdie Bogey time. In 2016, what Cubs starting pitcher led Major League Baseball in ERA?
Yeah, I was thinking right away 2015 Arrieta, but Kyle Hendricks was the man.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. Yeah, because I think a lot of people would have said either Arrieta or John Lester.
Right.
But yeah, Kyle Hendricks, 2.13 ERA
he was
in 2016.
Yep.
All right, Dad, thanks for joining me tonight. It's been a fun show. Have a great week, everybody. Tanner will be back next Monday for episode 329. Have a fantastic week, everybody.